and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
Grocery prices are still through the roof. Natural disasters are still devastating. And supply chains are still fragile. That's why millions of Americans are turning to My Patriot Supply, the country's most trusted preparedness company. Right now, they're offering $200 off their best-selling 3-month emergency food kit. This kit feeds one adult 2,000 calories a day for 3 full months. It's packed in sturdy, long-lasting containers with a 25-year shelf life. And best of all, it ships fast and free. But this special offer is only available for a limited time. My Patriot Supply rarely offers discounts this steep, so if there is ever a time to get prepared, this is it. Get ahead of the next crisis. Whether it's a natural disaster, supply chain disruption, or something bigger, you'll be glad you took action. Go to MyPatriotSupply.com to claim your $200 discount. That's MyPatriotSupply.com. Again, MyPatriotSupply.com. Stock up on peace of mind today.
You're locked into Money Matters Radio, 1120 AM WBNW. This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275CM FM, Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
As a busy mom, my to-do list is full.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
Visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much. And they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine, no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line now. It's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with your Financial Exchange quick tip of the day. And today we're talking about your brand new guide, Todd, how to leave assets to your beneficiaries. Todd, how can you ensure that your kids' inheritance can be protected from future divorces?
Well, estate planning, as you know, does things like avoid probate, protect assets from nursing homes, and reduce taxes. But you know what? The family behind the estate plan can be more important. And so the trusts live on after you die, and you can have language in there that divides the assets to the children, but doesn't just pay it out, right? It holds it in trust for them and allows them to be trustee, but just not take it. In order to get it, they have an independent trustee that can say yes or no. And that way, by not owning the asset, if they get divorced down the line after you're dead and the other side says, hey, I want half of what's in that trust, you're going to say, that's great, but you have to ask the independent trustee. So it's now not going to be available to you. And more than just the ability to say no, it's the fact that you don't own it. So if you don't own it, it's not a marital asset to begin with, so it should not be even subject to the divorce. So learning how your trust works after you die can oftentimes be more important than when you're living, and it does more for you after you die than when you're living sometimes.
The estate planning experts at Cushing & Dolan have been helping families like yours for more than 30 years, and they've written a brand new guide called How to Leave Assets to Your Beneficiaries. To get your free copy of this comprehensive guide that will help you determine the best way to leave assets to your family, simply call 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane.
Good morning, happy Thursday, and welcome back here to the Financial Exchange. We continue to have a busy earnings week and a volatile market continuing to play out. Monday, we had the substantial sell-off in equities and then the rally through Tuesday, Wednesday, and now Thursday in equities in response to just some softer tones coming from the White House when it comes to a number of different topics. We'll be hearing from Google parent company Alphabet today after the bell, so the kickoff of really those Megacap earnings, but we've been getting earnings from many different companies, airlines, consumer product companies, so we'll be discussing those a little bit, and there's a common theme running through many of these earnings, even between Procter & Gamble and American Airlines when it comes to what they're doing with their forecasts here. So we'll be parsing that out a little bit. But I think the main topic that we're going to start with today, Paul, is just what's going on in the White House. Obviously, anybody that's been keeping an eye on things knows that there's been a lot of volatility in decisions, a lot of volatility in markets in response to those decisions, and this week the push has been a response once again from the White House of market pressure results in calmed down wording from the White House in terms of what is being discussed, and it raises a lot of questions to me, which are mainly around, hey, if the White House is responding to equities getting, I don't know, what were we down, like 12% in total on Monday or something along those lines? Just how strongly are they going to respond if markets continue downwards on different policy decisions, and what does that mean for the outcome of things like tariffs? But let's start with what we know now, which is the White House was pretty heavily criticizing the Fed, pretty heavily criticizing or just continuing on with tariffs on China. And after meeting with some business leaders as well as probably some internal pressure from the likes of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have started to soften that. So what's been the latest on those fronts?
Yeah, so basically what we've seen heading into this week is first, the days are all blurring together, but either Tuesday or earlier this week, President Trump came out and sort of walked back some of his comments regarding the potential firing of Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, stating that while he would like him to lower rates, that he is not going to take any action to unseat him. And that was a sigh of relief for the markets, having that stability or reinforcing this idea that Chairman Jerome Powell would continue his role, combined with the fact that you had Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent alluding to the fact that there could be a de-escalation in place between China and the U.S. and acknowledging, both he and President Trump acknowledging that the 145% import tariff rate in place right now is just not sustainable going forward. And so those two factors combined led to the market rally that we saw over the course of the last couple of days. Finally, acknowledgement, or not finally, but acknowledgement, I guess, from the Trump administration that there needs to be a deal struck. However, tone has shifted a little bit. It seems as if heading into today, where you had China come out and say that there have been no talks thus far, and we've not really seen any progress. So it's heavily rumor mill kind of stuff that we're parsing through this week. None of this is concrete. It's more so parsing through what you're hearing from the White House at this point.
On Monday, there were also meetings with CEOs of some of the largest retailers out there. So Target, Walmart, Home Depot, all really, I think, gave a behind closed door stark warning to the president that, hey, should this continue, we're not talking about months before there are disruptions. It's a matter of weeks before there are shortages on shelves of certain items, and that could be quite disruptive. But all of this comes back to, I think, this inherent conflict that the president has. And I talked about this, obviously, you and I both, in our day job as financial advisors, talk to people about a whole litany of different things. And some of them are diehard Donald Trump supporters. Some of them are quite nervous about his policies. It runs the gambit. But one of the things that I've been consistently saying throughout all this is I do believe the president genuinely cares about his legacy. Mm-hmm. And for right or for wrong, I think part of that legacy in his own view is how well does the stock market do under his tenure. Under the first Trump administration, it was one of the better performances out of a stock market until COVID struck. And I think that is an inherent piece of what he views as success under his presidency. And thus far, it's been the worst 90 to 100 days of a White House, of a stock market going back to the 1920s.
1928,
that goal, at the moment at least, is kind of inherently in conflict with the other side of this, which is his kind of disdain for the American worker being played. That's a quote from a political analyst, David Urban, a former Trump political advisor. Hey, these two things, at the moment, or at least, are inherently in conflict. And the example would be, if you are really trying to make this all about Main Street policy, you might do something like raise the income tax rate on millionaires in order to reduce taxes on tips. But that could also have a big impact on the stock market. Mm-hmm. You might raise tariffs on every country out there in order to force more jobs back into the United States. But if that blows up the stock market, it is inherently in conflict with, I think, how he seemingly views his legacy. Because so far, there's been a couple of instances, one in the bond market surrounding the reciprocal tariffs, where things were kind of on the verge of blowing up, and whether he felt forced to step back or just chose to, he stepped back from those policies in order to kind of support markets. And then this week as well, no concrete action being taken, but seemingly some reaction to the big volatility in markets that we saw on Monday, the big downturn that we saw then, and pretty rapidly addressing issues that investors were continuing to express concern about.
That's what I've been having trouble with the first couple months here, because it did seem like through his first term, stock market performance was so much a bellwether for his success, and he brought it up numerous times. The S&P 500, as you were alluding to previously, was up 67% over the course of his first term. It did do tremendously well, but I had read somewhere, and again, these are all just speculations, that perhaps he had seen what had happened with President Biden and a stock market that actually did pretty well under Biden too. The S&P was up 56% over his tenure, 2022 being a really bad year. But perhaps what he saw with the distaste that many Americans had for Biden during what was a pretty good stock market period of performance, but inflation really took a huge hit on consumers,
right.
That's why he had shifted to thinking perhaps not putting as much importance on stock market performance. But then you have this year where some of these policies, the volatility that they've created with the market, I was surprised initially that he was continuing to be so sort of staunch in his views on them. And now walking it back a little bit, it seems like there is more credence to this idea that he does want to be unaligned with Wall Street a bit. But again, you're sort of parsing through, trying to make your best guess.
I think one thing is clear. Investors seem to be finally taking him seriously.
Mm-hmm.
You go to look at January and February of this year, equity markets hit all-time highs as he was talking about these rollout of tariffs. And my view there was people are just not paying attention. Yeah. Either they're not paying attention or they don't believe him. I think now investors are believing him and the cat's kind of out of the bag, and it is starting to impact everything from CEOs going out to the public and speaking very publicly against some of these policies to markets selling off and to a number of different things playing out in ways that they wouldn't expect. One of them has to do with earnings, and I do want to go there next. We're going to take a quick break, but we've had a few pretty substantial companies report earnings, and there's been one common theme among all of them. We'll cover that next here on the Financial Exchange.
Tariff fever is in high gear. We've got the latest on what might be next and how long it might last. Only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions. It's easy to say that you're simply leaving your assets to your children, but without proper beneficiary planning, it can cause significant problems. Call Cushing & Dolan at 866-848-5699 and get their new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. Don't leave your future or your children's future to chance. Call 866-848-5699 or request it online from our website, legalexchangeshow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
One of the keys to enjoying a peaceful retirement is flexibility. Hi, this is Chuck Zada from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Today, retirement planning involves lots of possible changes and challenges given all of the external factors that may affect your goals. So creating a budget for your retirement is vital to financial stability. Retirement comes with a number of monetary considerations, from how much money you'll need every month to managing your existing investments through market volatility. Our new guide is called How to Build a Retirement Budget, and it will offer a variety of options for your consideration that may lessen your risks when it comes to your planning. Call right now at 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. That's 800-393-4001 or request it online from our website, armstrongadvisory.com. That's armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Here at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we are committed to all students not only attending, but succeeding at school. Your presence is powerful. Share why you attend at doe.mass.edu.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Let's talk LDL. AKA bad cholesterol. The higher your LDL cholesterol, the higher your risk of a heart attack or stroke. Your health matters. Know your number. Talk to your doctor and get your cholesterol checked. And learn how to help lower your LDL bad cholesterol. Because your health is in your hands. Find out more at heart.org/LDL.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Like our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts, and you can register right now for this year's 5K at Castle Island by visiting dav5k.boston. The event will sell out again, so if you're interested in participating, now's the time to reserve your spot. Come out and help support our great American heroes by joining us for the DAV 5K. Visit dav5k.boston to register or to make a donation today. That's dav5k.boston.
Paul, what do American Airlines, Tesla, and Procter & Gamble have in common?
All weakening their guidance for this
Nothing
second half of the year?
is the answer.
They are companies.
Are publicly traded stocks. That's about all you got. But all three of them, and two of them in particular, in fact, American as well as Tesla, just removed any of their guidance. So they pulled their full year guidance. You were correct. Procter & Gamble weakened their overall guidance. Southwest Airlines also removed their full year outlook. And I'm going to, we've talked a fair bit about airlines and just, what they kind of stand for in this economy, which in my view is spending from especially higher income Americans, right? Which we've cited this statistic before, and I forget who did the data, but about half of total consumer spending right now is coming from the top 10% of income earners. So this is an important demo for the state of the overall economy. And both American and Southwest saying, look, there is so much uncertainty here that we are pulling our estimates of how much we think we will make for 2025. And my problem with this one is American isn't affected by these tariffs. Like, maybe some repair parts for their airplanes are going to be subject to higher prices because of these tariffs. I'm sure they import some supplies that go into repairing their Airbuses and Boeings that will be meaningfully high, Boeing 737s and Airbus planes. But by and large, this is a story about Southwest and American telling you, the investor, that their customers are so nervous that they are not booking flights and they're not really sure when they are going to again.
Right.
Yeah, it has to be fairly bad out there in terms of bookings for them to just say, nope, we don't know how much we're going to make and we are pulling it. Yeah, that doesn't happen when bookings go down by a couple of percentage points.
No, and you also had Southwest cutting back on some of their domestic flights later this year too. Like several of these companies have mentioned that they're not going to run as many routes out there, pointing directly to the demand piece that you're talking about there.
So through Wednesday, American Airlines stock had already tumbled 47% through Wednesday, more than 5 times the decline of the S&P 500. And so this continues to play out. But again, this one to me is such a major piece because you can look at a number of different companies and how they're affected by both tariffs as well as demand from consumers, and they'll all play out a little bit differently. Google is undoubtedly more impactful for the overall market than American Airlines is, but Google can't tell you the same things. Right? They make so much of their revenue, most of their revenue on business-to-business sales that, yeah, you could get some inclination of what businesses are doing in terms of advertising, but this tells you right up front what wealthy consumers are doing, because wealthy consumers, as well as business flyers, fly a lot on both American and Delta. They have massive international businesses, and to see those companies basically say, we're throwing our hands up, we don't know how much we're going to be able to make this year, is a shot across the bow here of, hey, there's clearly some uncertainty playing out on those wealthier Americans. And again, they represent half of consumer spending. And say what you want about where we might end up in terms of reshaping this country into more of a manufacturing power hub. I sure hope we do. It'd be wonderful if we are a world-class manufacturer of complex goods and semiconductors and all of those things. I would love that eventual outcome. But today we're a consumer-based economy.
100%.
Today, the stock market and the economy and employment in this country is all based on the fact that we consumers go out and spend, not we consumers go out and make. And so to see this from American as well as Southwest, and now Delta has done the same, definitely indicates something. Again, this could turn on a dime, right? If markets go right back up and are suddenly up 20% 3 months from now, then I would be willing to bet that those same consumers start spending on international travel again. But for the time being, they are very seemingly pulling back pretty quickly.
Yeah, just the big picture statistic that is always important to keep in mind is 2/3 of our economic growth comes from consumer spending, versus a country like China, for example, where 40% of their economic growth in the first quarter was from exports. So, very different makeup in terms of the economies. We are fully a consumption economy.
I'm starting to hear a little bit more from business leaders on pushback. And for good reason, CEOs have been hesitant to say anything publicly. I think, as you can imagine, most are probably opposed to tariffs on their goods. They're opposed to a lot of the stuff that they've heard coming out of the White House. But look, you don't want to be seen, I think, opposing a White House that just won a pretty landslide election and going out there and looking for retaliation unless
they're not afraid to mix it up.
Yeah, unless you're pretty sure it's going to benefit your business, you don't want to be going and doing that. But whether it's head of investment firms like Jamie Dimon and Ken Fisher, who wrote big opinion pieces around the reciprocal tariffs, whether it is now the CEOs of telecom providers or others, you're seeing and hearing a fair bit more of that. And as much as we talk about, what the stock market did to reverse the Trump administration's mind, I do wonder about these public comments that you're starting to hear trickle through here and there. Not on basic stuff, right? You're not going to hear this if there's talk of renegotiating the USMCA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. But when we talked about the 145% tariffs, when we talked about removing Fed Chair Jerome Powell, when we talked about all the reciprocal tariffs on many other countries, those were seemingly far enough out there compared to expectations that we started to hear more CEOs say, fix this or we have a real problem in terms of employment and growth and everything else. I don't know if there's really any other takeaways I have, but it stands in contrast to what we saw during the first, let's call it, 45 days of the new administration.
No, whoever you look at, there's just numerous companies that have reported earnings and have mentioned tariffs during their call and the potential impact for them. So whether you want to look at GE Vernova, who said that their costs could rise as much as $400 million this year. Merck said $200 million in rise in costs this year. AT&T and Verizon saying that headsets and wireless routers, those costs could go up. So all of the executives taking a point in time in this earnings cycle to mention that their businesses will dramatically change if there is not some resolve to this tariff situation over the next several weeks here.
Procter & Gamble, who reported earnings before the bell today and whose stock is down about 4% in early trading so far, indicated that their organic sales this year would be approximately 2% compared to the prior year. That's down from their January estimates when they said that they were expecting that figure to increase between 3 and 5% over the course of the year. The sales in the most recent quarter stood at $19.8 billion. And so same story here. Like they are bringing down their sales expectations, even for a brand like Procter & Gamble, which you buy no matter what. But their concern to me seems to be both about increased prices due to tariffs, as well as consumers that might be switching to off-brand names in the face of concern about recession.
Yeah, I think it's largely a consumer story because they import only about 10% of their goods and less than 15% come from China. So it's really a story about they're worried about the consumer spending less.
Quick break. Wall Street Watch is next.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @TFE Show. Breaking business news is always first, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com. Leaving assets to your beneficiaries is a critical piece of any estate plan. Cushing & Dolan, the experts in elder law, has written a new guide that may help ensure that your assets are protected for years to come, while helping you avoid unnecessary mistakes during your planning. As an example, the new federal estate tax exemption is nearly $14 million. That could lead to a larger inheritance for your family members, but still raises concerns. There are several strategies in this new guide that will help you learn how to make the right decisions about your distributions at the right time. Cushing & Dolan have been helping New England families for more than 30 years. Let them help you, too. Call 866-848-5699 and get their brand new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. That number again is 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. The DAV of Massachusetts has helped me and countless others adjust to civilian life through a variety of incredible programs. Through our local Veterans Assistance Program, we provide necessary services to veterans and their communities, such as food shopping, landscaping, and companionship, but we need your support. You can help by making a donation today. Please visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we have a guide available this month titled How to Build a Retirement Budget. Mike, one of the rules of thumb that gets tossed around is, hey, just withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year and you'll be fine. Is that true still?
It can be, but it also leads to some confusing conversations because that 4% rule, one, is dependent on a very specific asset allocation that was recommended by the person that created it. And two, a lot of those things have changed over time and doesn't really account for the fluctuations that every retiree sees, right? You might retire and not start Social Security right away, in which case your withdrawals could be higher for a period of time.
What about on the other side of the ledger when you look at expenses? A lot of people say, well, I expect my expenses to go down. Maybe I only need 70 to 80% of my pre-retirement income.
Yeah, I mean, this one makes sense, right? Like, you're right now making money. You might be putting money into your 401k, paying FICA taxes that you won't in retirement. But this one especially, I have to say, varies a lot from person to person. That's 70 to 80% of pre-retirement income. And think about it this way, right? Do I still have a mortgage? Might that mortgage get paid off at some point in my retirement? What sort of debts do I have? Am I going to downsize to one car? Are we going to need both? What sort of travel am I planning on? And so that 70 to 80% rule can be a good starting point, but really you need to start with the budget.
Our guide is titled How to Build a Retirement Budget, and the way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. That number again is 800-393-4001 to request our latest guide, How to Build a Retirement Budget.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Time now for Wall Street Watch. A complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Well, market futures told a different story this morning, but markets right now are extending gains as investors continue to monitor developments on the trade war between the U.S. and China. Wall Street is also sifting through more corporate earnings and companies pulling their outlooks due to economic uncertainty. Right now, the Dow is up by 0.2%, just over 250 points. S&P 500 is up 1.25% or 68 points, and the Nasdaq is up by 1.7% or 291 points. Russell 2000 is up by nearly 0.6%. 10-year Treasury yield is pulling back by 7 basis points so far today, now at 4.31%, and crude oil is up about 0.5% higher, trading at $62.62 a barrel. Travel stocks are garnering attention today after American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, and Alaska Air all withdrew their annual outlook, citing macroeconomic and market uncertainty. As for its earnings, America Air posted a slightly worse than expected revenue, while Southwest beat analysts' expectations. American up by 1%, Southwest edging higher, and Alaska Air is actually off by 10%. Meanwhile, consumer goods giant Procter & Gamble slashed its annual guidance, citing the challenging and volatile consumer and geopolitical environment. The parent company to Pampers and Tide also posted mixed quarterly results, narrowly beating on earnings but missing revenue expectations. That stock down by 4%. Another consumer-based company in Pepsi missed first-quarter earnings expectations. The food and beverage company also lowered its full-year outlook, citing the impact of tariffs. Pepsi down by 3%. Chipotle up by 1% after the burrito chain said consumers are pulling back on spending, also noting that tariffs will likely drive up costs this year. ServiceNow jumping by 14% after posting stronger than expected first quarter earnings and revenue, where it said the government's efficiency drive has increased demand for its platform. Comcast retreating 4% after the cable company saw a decline in customers during the quarter, but did beat earnings and revenue forecasts. Texas Instruments jumping over 6% higher after the semiconductor maker reported a double-digit quarterly sales growth and offered an upbeat guidance for the current quarter. And after today's closing bell, Alphabet will unveil their first quarter results. I'm Tucker Silva, and that's Wall Street Watch.
So I think it's safe to say, for at least the time being, we can put to bed the concern we expressed over the course of the last few weeks regarding President Trump's possible removal of Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve and the whiplash that markets could take, the Supreme Court case that could present itself as a result of any of that. The commentary from the president over the last few days has been very much, I might disagree with you, but I'm not going to go and do that because whatever convinced him that that's not a good idea. The main piece that I think is likely to dominate headlines, other than this big slew of earnings calls that we will continue to get, as a reminder, Google parent company Alphabet, the nearly $2 trillion company, will be reporting after the bell today, is going to be traded with China. As things stand today, 145% tariff rates on most goods coming into the United States from China. At those rates, as we've discussed, nobody is importing anything. They are simply telling the ships to turn around and go back because there will be very little in the way of trade that's actually conducted at tariff rates of those levels. The Wall Street Journal on Wednesday reported that administration officials are considering plans to slash tariffs on imports, and under the proposals, the ranges could come down to between 50 and 65%. I have to say, I am not sure that moves the needle. I mean, I would take it as a positive sign.
Right.
Were tariffs to get down to those rates, I would take it as a sign that negotiation would be more likely to happen, just as I think investors have been since Tuesday of this week, that, hey, negotiation is now likely to happen. In prior instances, we weren't so sure about that. But if you are the importer of almost anything, I still think you turn away that ship and start either looking for somewhere else to source that material or just not conducting trade with China. And that still represents probably a big problem. I doubt it's big enough. I doubt that that's enough of a reconciliation for China to say, yeah, we're suddenly going to start selling our rare earth materials to the United States again. And so I'm encouraged to see that we're talking about this, but I'm not sure that something like that is going to change the fundamentals on the ground of what we're seeing right now, which is CEOs warning the White House that we might not have products on our shelves in a few months.
I was uneasy about those rates that were proposed. Optimistic about the progress that has been made in terms of rhetoric over the last couple of days, but those rates, it just can't be understated enough. And I was stressing this yesterday, Mike, the reliance that we have on the current economic iteration on China for imports, and whether that's just pure import of goods from China or the materials that make up a lot of products that we consume or, utilize on a daily basis, it's a huge part of our economy. And ultimately, while the tariffs will raise revenue for the administration here, you and I and Tucker, everyone else, the consumers are the ones who bear the brunt of those tariff impacts.
And look, I feel like when we talk about tariffs on China, we all go to a few basic products like iPhones, which have now been exempted for the time being, like T-shirts and sunglasses and stuff that you and I consume all the time. Go to your office if you're listening to us at work right now, or if you're listening to us at home, go to your home office and just start picking up items. How many of them are made in China? Frankly, I don't know that it's the right approach, but I don't really care about that stuff. The fact that my Yeti mug is made in China, designed in Texas, made in China. Okay, if we want to slap 100% tariff on that, I'm pretty sure we can manage to make a Yeti mug somewhere else. The problems that this poses are the semiconductors. They are the intricate magnet technology that China has a near monopoly on. They are the rare earth materials that go into pretty much all of our defense manufacturing, that without those items, there's real questions about how some major companies continue to exist. So do I care that, there's a 100% tariff on a Yeti mug? No, probably not. Some company out there is going to care quite a bit. I do care that suddenly, Raytheon cannot import whatever crazy material they need in order to manufacture the next defense weapon that suddenly cannot be made anymore. I care that the magnet technology that goes into all sorts of bottling plants and car manufacturers cannot come into the United States anymore because of these export restrictions that are, again, not apples to apples in terms of Chinese retaliation, but ways in which they know they can hurt us too, because look, there's plenty of other buyers out there for this stuff. So we will see where this develops, but the response from China has not been terribly encouraging either, since, again, it's only been 3 days here, but the wording coming out of China has been drop everything and then we're happy to talk, right. Not, oh, well, this is encouraging. Let's see what comes of it.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a standoff, and we'll continue.
It'll be the only thing that dominates for the time being. I know there's stuff around taxes. I know there's stuff around Doge and spending cuts, and all of those are interesting and would normally be what we are talking about. Earnings, fascinating stuff that we would normally be covering. Frankly, Google's earnings kind of take a back seat until we have more certainty around this, because it is so much more important.
It's funny. I was doing a call earlier with Vinny Penn, one of our associates down in New Haven, Connecticut, and I said that exact same thing. I think this is just going to dominate our show for a long period of time. Yeah. He goes, don't you guys have anything else to talk about on the program? I said, Vinny, ultimately, at this point, this is kind of the end-all, be-all, so we'll continue to cover it because from an economic perspective, it's the biggest story.
Well, my internal clock is all messed up because I was on a plane this morning, so I am going to take a break from tariff talk, and we're going to talk Chipotle next on the Financial Exchange.
The global trade war has roiled markets, and a recession could be next. Keep it here for breaking business news and complete market updates on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The breadth of the stock market sell-off in recent days hasn't been seen since the early days of the pandemic. And while it's easy to say don't panic, if you're concerned about your portfolio, given the impact of these tariffs, now's the time to have that conversation. Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. If the market correction has you anxious, or worse, rattled, give us a call at 800-393-4001. Let's get together and talk through your financial strategy, evaluate its strengths and weaknesses, and make decisions for the future that are in your best interest. These are challenging times, but we've dealt with them before and are prepared to deal with them again. Our goal is to help you protect the assets that you've worked so hard to attain. You can give us a call at 800-393-4001 and request a no-obligation consultation. That number again is 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Beneficiary planning and asset protection go hand in hand. Cushing & Dolan has a new guide out called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries, and it can help make your planning process smooth and easy. Leaving your assets to your children isn't as simple as it sounds, especially if they have problems of their own. If you're retired or nearing retirement, it's time to consider the best way to keep your assets in your family while avoiding significant financial consequences down the road. Call Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699 and get their new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. You'll learn which paths are the safest when it comes to protecting yourself and your children while avoiding unnecessary risks that can create substantial problems in the long run. That number again is 866-848-5699. Or you can request it online from our website, LegalExchangeShow.com. That's LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, the grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
The Financial Exchange is now available on your Alexa smart speaker. Ask to play the Financial Exchange and catch up on anything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
So, Paul, when I think about the spring season, I usually think of it as housing season. It's where everybody lists their home for sale. We see a dramatic uptick in inventory. But if you're an executive at Chipotle, it's what you call burrito season, because for whatever reason, the busiest time of the year for the chain is from Easter through May. I'm thinking it's a combination of Cinco de Mayo plus busy college students who are studying for exams and don't have time to cook anything, because they do point to sales slowing during the summer months when college students return home and many customers are traveling. But in any case, it is prime time right now for Chipotle, and they too are not seeing the greatest results out there. And I was in my mind trying to kind of put together how we categorize Chipotle's sales, because when I think of one of their main competitors, McDonald's, I look at McDonald's sales and say, okay, this is kind of a bellwether for consumers turning to the cheaper option. There's not many places you get a cheaper menu item than McDonald's. Maybe Burger King and a few others, but McDonald's is the big publicly traded one, alongside Walmart, where I can say, hey, if people are getting budget conscious, they're going to shop at these places more. I do not believe Chipotle occupies that space. I believe that Chipotle is much more of a upper-end discretionary income type brand, but I don't know. It certainly doesn't occupy the same place as Delta Airlines, I guess, would be my point here.
Definitely not. This is their first same-store sales decline since 2020 that they've experienced here. They've just had a tremendous run in terms of their sales growth, and ultimately, I was going through the pricing on it actually during the break, to put together a burrito bowl. It comes in around $14 or $15, but I was talking with friends over the weekend. It's pretty comparable that it seems like if you go out to a regular lunch place, like not the McDonald's of the world, that's kind of where you're falling in that $14 to $15 range. But it's something that from a discretionary standpoint, you can look at your own budget as a household and say, do I really need to go out and buy that? And it seems like maybe that's part of the reason for the slowdown. They do import a lot of avocados from Mexico, but they're not really impacted by some of the tariff talk that we've had.
Yeah, I remember talking about that early on a few months ago, but that's largely died down, and I don't think is as big a threat to Chipotle's business.
So again, it's a sales issue, like we talked about with some of these other companies, Procter & Gamble and others, and it does seem like the general feedback that I'm getting talking with clients and other individuals out there, a lot of pause and uneasiness on just, hey, I'm going to hold off on that vacation. I'm going to hold off on that housing project. I'm not sure if you're getting the same sort of vibe, but
I'm hearing the same thing, Paul. Yeah. But here's where I continue to struggle is we're very much in this New England bubble. And most people who are listening are very much in this New England bubble as well. And I don't know that same thing is playing out in other parts of the country, right? I mean, for a number of different reasons. If you live and work in New England, you're probably more likely to be working for the healthcare sector, where some of your contracts may be subject to DOGE infrastructure cuts. You're more likely to be working in education, where Harvard University is going through all sorts of funding issues as well. And so, and as a region, just trends far more liberal than almost all the rest of the country. And so is what we are hearing from people much more a reaction to those factors, Or is this something that is playing out nationally? And the evidence seems to be piling up more and more in the camp of, no, this is playing out nationally, because otherwise, American Airlines is not a New England regional airline. Chipotle is not a regional restaurant like Ground Round was. And so I tend to think that what you are hearing is correct. And it might be exacerbated in the New England area. It might be exacerbated in D.C., where people are really worried about their jobs, even if they're not employed by the government. But it seems to be playing out nationally across the board, this general concern about what is to come next, both in terms of the stock market and employment.
Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
Generally speaking, for the last 50 or so years, with a few exceptions, the dollar has been on a one-directional trend. It's been headed up since the 1970s, and researchers point to all sorts of things that might cause this. Had a multi-decade slump after the dot-com bubble, and then also after the Great Recession. But generally speaking, dollar has been on the rise for quite some time. It was a stated goal of the Trump administration to see that reverse to some degree, because if you want to be an exporting powerhouse, it does not help to have a very expensive currency. Maybe I do need to explain that. I doubt I do need to, but if you are Ford Motor Company trying to sell your cars into the Argentinian market and you are competing with a Chinese automaker who A, can do it for cheaper, but B, has the cheaper currency, then you're going to have a tougher time with your sales over there than you would in other country being the manufacturer of those goods. In any case, the dollar has been sliding pretty substantially this year, and we might think about that, our own purchasing power here. We might think about a number of different considerations when it comes to our dollar sliding, but one that I hadn't really gone all the way through was the effect of other countries in, say, Europe and all of their issues. So walk us through that side of the coin, Paul, here, which would be if you are BMW or if you are Nestle and you are selling to the single largest market you probably sell to, the United States, and you're seeing that currency fall apart, what does that do to your company in terms of its profitability?
Yeah, typically when we cover these currency stories, usually it's the reverse of it. It's, a Procter & Gamble talking about the impact of a stronger dollar weakening its bottom line because it's selling into other areas of the global economy, its second largest market being China. This is the reverse of that, where you have European countries. If you look at the Stocks 600 index, which is kind of the S&P 500 proxy for the European markets, its members get about 60% of their sales overseas. So if you're selling into BMW is a good example, or the other one is SAP, a software company. If you're selling into the United States and all of a sudden the dollar has weakened relative to where it was previously, that can have a dramatic impact on your bottom line. Now, all these big companies typically have currency hedges in place to negate the impact from that. However, the longer it goes on, the dollar weakening, the further off they are from being able to hedge that risk. So it does present a tremendous risk to them.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, Alphabet starts to set the tone for the Megacap earnings season. We'll be covering Apple and Alphabet parent company next. Retirement planning is complicated enough without having a formal budget to help you maintain your lifestyle during your later years. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Our new guide called How to Build a Retirement Budget was written specifically for this purpose. Our goal is to help take your financial concerns out of your retirement years. There are numerous issues to deal with when creating a retirement budget. Everything from understanding where your income will come from, to setting up a proper withdrawal strategy, to being able to remain flexible as market conditions change. This new guide offers structural guidance that may alleviate the pressures of creating your budget. You can request your copy right now by calling 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. Once again, that number, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com. This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM FM, Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Are you over the age of 50? Want peace of mind and financial security for your family? Here's an important message to you from Senior Care USA. The average funeral now costs over $10,000. That leaves your loved ones the burden of paying your debts and funeral costs. Our plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay your family up to $30,000 to help pay for your funeral and other expenses. There are no medical exams. Your rates will never increase, and your plan cannot be canceled, regardless of your medical conditions, as long as you make your premium payments. Get up to $30,000 in final expense insurance. Call now for free information. Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone in just a few minutes. Call right now.
Call 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. That's 800-378-3818. Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with your Financial Exchange Quick Tip of the Day. And today we're talking about your brand new guide, Todd, how to leave assets to your beneficiaries. Todd, why can't you just add your kids to your accounts or to your house deed?
Well, you can. It's just not a good idea. So people who do that understand with an account, right, you can put a joint name on the account. Now, that doesn't actually complete the gift because you actually have to take the money out and then the gift is complete. But when you set it up, yeah, the asset would avoid probate. But if something happens to the child, it's going to be, available. Half the asset would be subject to the children's creditor. So you don't want that. And secondly, if you only put one kid on the deed, you've likely disinherited the other kids. So it's not really good planning overall. Whereas if you put the house in the kid's name, now you've actually made a completed gift of half the house and would need to file a gift tax return. Number one. Number two, of course, it's exposed to the child's creditors and, yes, divorces. You could find yourself at some point owning half your house with an ex-in-law. Not sure that's a good way to plan. So please, put together trusts. Don't just throw names on deeds or on bank accounts because, as I always like to say, nothing good comes from giving assets away while you're living.
The estate planning experts at Cushing & Dolan have been helping families like yours for more than 30 years, and they've written a brand new guide called How to Leave Assets to Your Beneficiaries. To get your free copy of this comprehensive guide that will help you determine the best way to leave assets to your family, simply call 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Financial Exchange. Our top story today continues to be the ongoing trade war between the United States and China and the the fallout on corporate earnings and elsewhere from that possibility. But today, equity markets moving strongly to the upside. We've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 269 points, or 0.2%. The S&P 500 up 72, or 1.3%, and the Nasdaq up 305 points, 1.8% this morning. Yield on the 10-year Treasury down slightly to 4.327, so some calm there in the bond market for the time being. And oil, which has obviously been dropping substantially, now sitting at $62.70 a barrel. That brings our national average for gas prices across the country down to $3.17 as of today. Across the New England region, you're largely seeing that a little bit lower, with Maine sitting at $2.98, New Hampshire sitting at $2.85, Massachusetts sitting at $2.96, Rhode Island at $2.95, Connecticut at $3.06, and Vermont at $3.09. The only other thing I wanted to check on is where we are now sitting at for the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. Yeah, sitting still just below that 7% mark on the general 30-year fixed, and slightly above that 7 mark on the 30-year jumbo. Anything else catching your eye in terms of market? Obviously, we're in the midst of that spring home buying season that will really continue right through July 4th holiday, and then see another uptick in the fall in all likelihood. So that 30-year mortgage story continues to dominate, and we're starting to see inventory tick up in large swaths of the country, just not here in New England. But with mortgages up at 7%, one of two things is going to happen. Either people are going to delist homes because they're not moving, or prices are coming down.
Yeah, we saw a report come out this morning where the sales of previously owned homes in March fell 5.9% from February to an annualized rate of 4 million on a seasonally adjusted basis. They were lower, 2.5% lower than March of last year. So kind of furthering your point, Mike, increase in inventory, it was up 20% from a year earlier, but the amount of sales seemed to be slowing down, a combination of the higher mortgage rates and the concern of the broader economy.
Back to the subject of Chinese tariffs, the Ministry of Commerce spokesperson for China, He Yadong, said at present there are absolutely no negotiations on the economy and trade between China and the United States. So, again, this is going to be the dominant story here. And thus far, in spite of the commentary this week, every time the president has announced tariffs on China, there has been no hint of negotiation or hint of reconciliation. It has been China responding in kind and with force. Maybe not necessarily in kind because they have different tools in their belts, but responding very differently than, for instance, what you got out of the European Union, Vietnam, or other countries that have largely come to the negotiating table. We will kick off Megacap earnings this afternoon after the bell with Alphabet reporting. What are we expecting to hear from Apple? Sorry, I keep saying Apple. Apple, not Apple.
Not
Alphabet.
Apple.
It is Google.
Just call it Google.
Let's just call it Google. I'm done with this. Google's parent company. What are we expected to hear, and will it really tell us anything larger about the state of the economy? I mean, very few companies get a better idea of advertising revenue, I suppose, so that'll be compelling.
Yeah, one could argue that they have a monopoly on online advertising. In fact, many federal judges are making that argument. This week they are battling the Justice Department over the potential breakup of Alphabet, decoupling perhaps its Google Chrome browser or some of its advertising technology. Those are some of the things that have been potentially rumored to have occurred, or something that the Justice Department would like, but that still has to go through the court process. They also have had 2 federal judges ruling that they have illegally monopolize some online advertising technology markets. So that's kind of the backdrop on what they're dealing with on the legal front. Of course, as you mentioned, they're on the forefront of the advertising for online. If you have any sort of recessionary impacts to a decline in e-commerce and advertising spending, they could be significantly impacted there. The numbers that they're going to report obviously are on the prior quarter, so they're anticipating a 12% revenue growth for the quarter, some pretty strong numbers. But ultimately, the eye for all investors out there will be any type of commentary they may have on the current economic backdrop. They find themselves in a difficult place when you're in the ire of the Justice Department. Microsoft can sort of relate to this back in the late 90s, where it is a period of significant innovation in AI. It's extremely competitive as to who is going to grab the biggest foothold there. And I talked about this on the show the other day. ChatGPT and other models like that, to me, serve as a big risk to Google's search business.
Explain that a little bit better, because, I've been watching the two of us, right? I'm ongoing right now, Googling different things, looking up different items. You've got ChatGPT open and, are also summarizing some things. But that's some pretty serious headline risk for Google outside of all of the antitrust concerns that have been dominating Google's story over the last few years. This AI risk, spell it out word for word in terms of how it poses a threat to Google.
Yeah, so Google has about 90% of the search market. If you look at the other competitors that it is in the same arena with, they just absolutely pale in comparison. They are dominant in that space. And how Google makes its money is that Mike or myself, if we're out traveling on vacation, we're looking up, hey, good restaurants in the Charleston area or where I was or whatever the case may be. They are generating Google, that is, revenue from advertisers for local restaurants to be at the top of their search there. If that were to deviate, where now, as you mentioned, I'm on ChatGPT searching things, there's other competitors out there. Meta's going to have its own one. And Google, to be fair, does have its Gemini service. But there is the potential for fragmentation in the search market where my go-to for looking things up may not be Google going forward. And in particular, when you have the backdrop of a lot of antitrust pressure on Google, what happened to Microsoft, this was a different technology trend, is more specific to the PC market, but they took their eye off the ball or just were all consumed by the antitrust allegations. And as a result, they missed a lot of technology trends over the next decade, particularly in mobile and others. And the same thing could potentially happen to Google. It's just a risk that looms.
Yeah, I mean, if you were sitting there in, I don't know, when did the BlackBerry come out?
Early 2000s?
06?
Yeah, if you were sitting there in 1990,
it's got to be earlier than that.
If you were sitting there in 1999 and saying, "Hey, who's going to be the dominant player
99
in the consumer hardware market for electronics?" One of the biggest bets out there would have had to be Microsoft. I remember they came out with a smartphone very early on that completely failed across the board. You probably wouldn't have put a whole bunch of money on Apple, and you certainly wouldn't put any money on some tiny Canadian company called BlackBerry. But yeah, with Google, that threat to their search business it could be overstated because they are investing, billions upon billions into their own artificial intelligence and are looking for ways to monetize it as well. And they can afford to do so. So they do have a leg up there. But I think about it, just think about it actually how when you went to school. I distinctly remember having classes with librarians on how to properly use search when doing a research paper, when utilizing search, because they were going from here's how you used to look it up in an encyclopedia to here's how you accurately use search and Google and get rid of bad results and find the stuff that you actually need and cite it properly, etc. That same exact process, I guarantee you, is occurring already or is being planned out in public schools across the country when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence. It can do really compelling things, stuff that I have no idea how to do as somebody who's only one generation removed from it. But I'm sure you guys have heard of this too. But there's another AI system out there. You can basically feed a whole bunch of different sources that you want to learn about. Like, okay, these 5 articles, obviously you can do things where you summarize them, but there's another AI service where you say, okay, read these 7 different pieces and create a 30-minute podcast for me. Because I want to listen to it on my way home and I want to just get it that way instead of having to read through something. And it will create a personalized podcast based on the sources that you used. That is not something that Google is going to be prepared to deal with. They could, Because if they can sell advertisements on those podcasts, then they can crush it. But that is a real threat to the entirety of Google's business that didn't exist before. And we're not even getting into the fact that 2 judges have now called them a monopoly and are looking for some form of breakup when it comes to their business. So it'll be interesting to hear from a number of different perspectives about Alphabet's earnings. I don't think it's going to tell us much about the state of the consumer and their concerns about recession and trade war, but I do think it tells you a lot about where they see threats coming down the highway. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, a little bit of trivia for you next here on the Financial Exchange.
Tariffs fears continue to grip markets. Get the latest straight from Wall Street right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. It's easy to say that you're simply leaving your assets to your children, but without proper beneficiary planning, it can cause significant problems. Call Cushing & Dolan at 866-848-5699 and get their new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. Don't leave your future or your children's future to chance. Call 866-848-5699 or request it online from our website, LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
Retirement planning is complicated enough without having a formal budget to help you maintain your lifestyle during your later years. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Our new guide called How to Build a Retirement Budget was written specifically for this purpose. Our goal is to help take your financial concerns out of your retirement years. There are numerous issues to deal with when creating a retirement budget. Everything from understanding where your income will come from, to setting up a proper withdrawal strategy, to being able to remain flexible as market conditions change. This new guide offers structural guidance that may alleviate the pressures of creating your budget. You can request your copy right now by calling 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. Once again, that number, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Let's talk LDL. AKA bad cholesterol. The higher your LDL cholesterol, the higher your risk of a heart attack or stroke. Your health matters. Know your number. Talk to your doctor and get your cholesterol checked. And learn how to help lower your LDL bad cholesterol. Because your health is in your hands. Find out more at heart.org/LDL.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up because we have something better,
stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit goredforwomen.org today to learn more.
Miss any of the show? Catch up at your convenience by visiting financialexchangeshow.com and clicking the on-demand icon where you'll find all of our interviews and full shows. This is your home for the latest business and financial news in New England and around the country. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, time for trivia here on the Financial Exchange, and today is Kelly Clarkson's 43rd birthday. Clarkson rose to fame when she became the first winner of American Idol. Clarkson has since gone on to sell over 30 million albums and has won 3 Grammy Awards. So, trivia question today. What year did Kelly Clarkson win American Idol? Once again, what year did Kelly Clarkson win American Idol? Be the 7th person today to text us at 617-362-1385 with the correct answer, and you get a brand new Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. And once again, the 7th correct response to text us at 617-362-1385 will win that t-shirt. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
What percent of our listeners could rattle off a Kelly Clarkson song?
All of them.
We'll see.
We did receive a economic data point this morning that we have not yet discussed, which was the weekly jobless claims. As a reminder, we get a monthly jobs report that surveys both businesses as well as consumers. We also get a weekly read from states who submit data to the federal government on, pardon me, how many people are signing up for unemployment. And it is as close as you can get to a real-time indicator on the state of the labor market. And so we've been keeping an eye on it because, look, CEOs have not been talking very optimistically about this year, and they have been pulling back on new hiring. But the weekly jobless claims came in at 222,000. That's up about 6,000 from the month prior and right in line with expectations. So the firing story continues to be a non-story to this point. I think there's a few things you can point to here. One, if you're a government worker who has been laid off to this point, you are likely receiving severance, so you cannot file for unemployment anyway, and you also don't show up in these numbers in the first place because you have a different unemployment system that you file through. And if you're a government contractor, same story to this point. You haven't really seen those job cuts come yet because the funding hasn't been fully cut off, and the Trump administration is winning and losing some court cases when it comes to all of that. And so, yeah, there have been stories here and there of DOGE cuts and how that might play out, but it certainly has not affected the labor market to this point. And likewise, you know, if you had asked me late last year when we were talking about the things that Amazon and Google and Microsoft were all talking about, I would have told you, yeah, it looks like layoffs might be around the corner, but to this point, they haven't really occurred. But I want to cover some of those actions that Google and the big tech companies have been taking. Pardon me. Google, for one, is forcing some remote workers to come back 3 days a week or lose their jobs. It's a pretty far cry from where they were a few years ago during the COVID pandemic, and offering those employees remote work, you know, substantially falls right in line with what their competitors have been doing, though, because, you know, Amazon did this, I think it was late last year, kind of blew up in their face because they were hoping a bunch of people quit, and turned out they didn't have enough office space for those people. So we'll see if Google falls for the same problem here. But I'm seeing Microsoft, too. Microsoft is apparently kind of taking a page out of Amazon's playbook here, which is, hey, you low-performing employee based on these metrics, we're going to put you on a performance improvement plan, and if you don't improve, you are fired. But as an added incentive, like, here's $10,000 if you just want to walk away. And I don't think that's actually going to be successful for them in this economy to get rid of some of those low improvers. The reason they do this is because, you know, if you take that money, you're far less to end up in a lawsuit with the employer. And so it's, you know, on average, probably just cheaper for Microsoft to go and look at something like that. And the package is probably a heck of a lot more than $10,000. But in any case, it's another company, you know, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, some of the biggest tech employers out there that seem to be speaking from the same playbook here. I'm sure there are some at Google who are really seeing the benefit of being in office, but what I by and large see here is a company that wants to reduce headcount and wants to do so in the least controversial way they can, which is saying, hey, get back to the office.
The path of least resistance, sort of not a layoff, but sort of trying to usher people out the door as nicely as possible. And that was the Amazon story too. You know, they can make the veiled argument of, oh, it's to increase productivity and, you know, communication between teammates that you come back into the office. But ultimately, we know what the real story is here. And it's pointed out by them offering voluntary buyouts. You know, if you're doing that and you're coupling that with bringing someone into the office 3 days a week, that is the intention behind these moves.
I struggle with the employment picture because on one hand, it is very much good news that the unemployment rate still sits at the low 4s, and you know we are still not seeing any sort of uptick in jobless claims or really any indication of mass layoffs is just not there. And I find that quite encouraging because you know we're at such a healthy starting point from the labor market. And look, I know if you are listening with a college student who's graduating in May at home, you're probably experiencing something very different, and I acknowledge that. But you know, compared to other times in history, this starting point is pretty good. The downside to that is cuts to the job market never come early in an economic downturn. They're one of the last things that you see in terms of that overall downturn. And I'm wondering if I can quickly pull it up here. Unemployment rate. I want to look it up back in 2008 just so we can, there we go. So the unemployment rate during the downturn in 2008, it started, May of 2007 was sitting at 4.4%. You didn't hit that peak until October of 2009. The stock market had already bottomed back in March of 2009. You had already been in a recession for a good year prior to that. The unemployment rate, which by the way topped out at 10% during that recession, did not hit that peak, and you did not see those big layoffs really until midway through 2008 and late into 2009 when those things really started taking place. And so the unemployment rate is very important. It is an indicator of a lot of different things. It is not a leading indicator of recession. It is the important thing to notice here. If anything, it tells you you're already in a recession once you start seeing it going up.
I'm interested to see, I believe it's probably next Friday that we get the month of April jobs report in terms of what the numbers come out, because I just can't imagine, like you were mentioning, on the hiring front. I could see the jobless gains. We've talked about that data not being an issue, but I can't see too many new jobs being added, but we'll see.
Quick break, trivia winner, and then stock investors and the frazzled market coming up next.
Bringing the latest financial news straight to your radio every day. It's the Financial Exchange on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much. And they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line And now it's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
Hi, I'm Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. The DAV of Massachusetts provides thousands of hours of voluntary services at our VA medical centers and soldiers' homes and is the only DAV department in the country to lead a veterans housing initiative for both single veterans and those with families. These programs are critical to serving our veterans in their time of need. You can help our great American heroes by making a donation today. Please visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hi, it's Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we have a guide available this month titled How to Build a Retirement Budget. Mike, one of the issues that we've seen for retirees in the last several years is significantly higher home insurance premiums and property taxes going up as well. How do people attempt to navigate this but still stay within the budget they had laid out for themselves?
Yeah, look, the cost of home ownership, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. Whether you are buying a home for the first time or you are just seeing those insurance and tax rates that you mentioned going up, it is really impossible to avoid. And I think that's where that flexibility in the budget comes in and needs to be recognized. Because, for instance, you might have factored in a huge cost savings by moving to Florida a decade ago.
Sure.
A lot of that has been eaten up over the course of the last several years. And so you have to have a budget that can evolve with your lifestyle over time.
How often do you review that budget?
You know, I think it's important to at least get a grasp on it once a year. And you can really see costs fluctuate a lot during those periods of time. But those flexibility points are really important because you have to account for inflation, and different things inflate at different rates. So, for example, you might see that your costs of health care rise dramatically in your later years, both because you need more of it and because health care costs inflate faster than other types of costs. And you have to build those into the budget, even though you might be paying nothing for them today.
This month, our guide is titled How to Build a Retirement Budget, and the way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. The guide again is How to Build a Retirement Budget, and the number to call is 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Miss any of the show? The Financial Exchange Show podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, trivia question today was, what year did Kelly Clarkson win American Idol? Well, that would be back in 2002. Scott from Chelmsford, Mass. was our winner today, taking home a brand new Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. And we play trivia every day here on the Financial Exchange. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
Paul, I oftentimes poo-poo folks when they tell me about volatility in the markets, because I've heard people describe 2024 as a volatile market, and it just plain old wasn't. But, you know, there's a lot of different things that affect people's perceptions of volatility. One of them is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, because it's just always been a part of market reporting. And these days, you know, today we're having a 250-point swing that represents about 0.2%, and it's not that significant. However, this year, you can absolutely claim volatility is back in fashion. And, you know, whether you want to measure with the VIX, which, you know, reached 34 back in April, which is, highest you saw since COVID levels. Whether you want to talk about any other measure in the bond market, et cetera, it is certainly the case that volatility is back in markets right now. It is higher in many ways than we've seen for several years. And I think investors, especially newer investors, are having a tough time kind of digesting that, because honestly, even in 2022, when we saw some volatility there, it was very short-lived. COVID was very short-lived in terms of volatility we saw there, right? You had market breakers circuit breakers on the markets back in 2020 that hit. And so, I kind of shake this moment off because it wasn't as bad as that. But if it continues, I'm seeing it play out with people I speak to about their lack of confidence that they had gained over the last few years when it came to investing when markets are down, et cetera, et cetera. I think all of that's being challenged this year.
It is. It's been a year that's been just marred by up and down days. It just is something that really that you couldn't remember since 2020. That is the last period of time. The S&P had gained or lost at least 1% in 7 of the last 10 sessions, and April is going to be the most volatile calendar month. So it comes to a point when you're dealing with clients that you just want to make sure that their allocation is positioned appropriately during this period of volatility, because that's what you lean on in these times. And people who do not have an allocation that they're comfortable with, usually these periods of volatility leads to them questioning the strategy or getting emotionally upset by the ongoings of the market that we've seen over the last month.
And what worries me the most when I think about this overall situation is there's a lot of people that I've talked to over the course of the last year or so who maybe missed out on some of the big gains in 23 and 24 because they just didn't think they were possible. They maybe thought we were going into recession, or that taxes were going up, or any number of things might have played out. They are feeling like they are playing catch up, perhaps. And in many cases, the story I've heard is, I really thought, whether I agreed with his policies or not, I really thought that Donald Trump would be good for the stock market, and I might have gotten more aggressive because of that with my investment portfolio than I otherwise would have. And now I'm kind of sitting here. I'm not ruined. Most people haven't been ruined by this type of volatility unless you're all sorts of levered up into concentrated bets. But maybe just getting a little bit concerned about, okay, if this were to continue, if this does result in a recession, if the tariffs are back on play as they seem to be changing week to week, how am I positioned for something like that? And that's the good question to ask. It's not a great question to ask, like, hey, when should I sell all this and go to cash? Trying to time that, maybe somebody out there can do it, but I've never met them, and I certainly know that I can't try and figure out the timing of all of this because the news story is changing every day. The question to be asking yourself is, if we do get that worst case for stock markets, I'm not saying about the employment situation or manufacturing, but let's talk about the worst case for the stock market, which is a drawn-out, protracted recession with a deep drawdown in stocks. Will I be able to withstand that? And I don't just mean that from your portfolio, but hey, if I lose my job, what sort of situation would I be in if I was without an income for 6 months? Would I be able to make an emergency repair to my home or on my car if something happened? And then, yes, of course, if I did see a stock market downturn that lasted 4 or 5 years, which I know is a foreign concept to some people listening right now, but 2008, that downturn lasted about 5.5 years. .com bubble, that downturn in stocks lasted a good 6 years if you were diversified, and a lot longer if you weren't. If you can't answer those questions of, hey, could I withstand that and how would I do it? Please give the folks at Armstrong Advisory Group a call. We offer free consultations. We'll sit down with you to address your specific issues with your specific portfolio and your specific lifestyle, because it is different for every single individual, and simply filling out a survey online is not going to answer all those questions for you. Give us a ring at 800-393-4001. That's the number for the Armstrong Advisory Group. We've got a presence across New England, but we sit down with our clients across the country, across the world. So if you have questions or you know somebody who does, the number again is 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
In the backdrop of everything going on with tariffs, there's also been competing tax bills that have been making their way through the House and Senate via the reconciliation process because they do not have the votes to pass them via a regular bill. The conjecture out there has been throughout all of this, where are the cuts going to come and how are you going to pay for them? Because there are limitations in terms of what they're able to do. And frankly, the limitations that I'm most concerned about today is how is the bond market going to treat some sort of giant tax cut with big deficit spending, if that's what we get. I'm not convinced that that's where we're going to end up, but if we get that, will you see yields rise because international investors are just a bit fed up with the U.S. Story, both in terms of trade as well as deficits? The possible outcome of what had been discussed is, hey, in order to fund some of these big tax cuts on Social Security, on overtime, on tips, would be bumping up the tax rates for top income earners, for millionaires and other groups. Steve Bannon had pushed for this quite a bit behind closed doors. President Trump over the last few days seemed to have tossed some cold water on that one, saying that a potential millionaire's tax was, quote, very disruptive. That was after former House Speaker Newt Gingrich circulated a message from Trump saying the president loves the idea of a small tax increase on the rich, but was counseling Republicans against it for a number of political reasons. This is all reporting from the Wall Street Journal. So this makes two things more likely to me. One, I don't think that top income bracket is moving much at all, which is currently sitting at 37%. So if you're earning, I think it's as a married couple over $750,000, you're hitting that 37% rate. Probably not going anywhere during this bill. It also makes it more difficult to pass some of those priorities, though, that he campaigned on, such as the tax on tips, Social Security, and other items that would be more Main Street focused. So I'll be very interested to see where this all comes out. They are not finding much success in finding the cuts that they want to do to offset all of this. And so in the absence of tariff revenue offsetting it, in the absence of massive government cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and defense, which are not coming either, I don't know how much of a tax bill you're really going to be able to put together here without that tax income on millionaires.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that this is something that the Republican Party was potentially mentioning as an option. Yeah, it just seems so counterintuitive.
But frankly, look, I mean, the political norms have changed.
Of course.
They have changed significantly. They've been changing over the last 8 years. But the Republican Party is not the party of free trade anymore. They are not necessarily the always pro-business party as they were prior to 2016. And that has been, there's been a general push away from free markets from both Democrats and Republicans over the last few years. But this did surprise me quite a bit. It's pretty unrecognizable from the Republican mantra over the last 50 years, but was kind of in line with stuff like tariffs and other policies that have been coming out of the Republican Party this time around.
Not that I agree with the idea of increasing the highest bracket, but Trump mentioning that the reason that they shouldn't proceed with it is it would be very disruptive and a lot of millionaires would leave the country. That I sort of scratched my head on, just because the whole idea of renouncing citizenship and moving out of the United States, to me, just because of an increase of 37 to 39.6%, to me feels rather unlikely.
I would agree there. I would be much more concerned about a bump up of the corporate tax rate and companies' abilities to relocate their headquarters. Go show me which country that you actually would feel comfortable living in that's going to tax you on your income if you're making $3 million a year at less than 40%.
Yeah.
It's a pretty limited list.
Right.
It's a fairly limited list, and so I'm with you there. I don't know to what degree it actually drives investment out of the United States. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, bit of stack roulette here on the Financial Exchange.
Market volatility is at its highest point since the pandemic. Keep it here for the most comprehensive coverage of the global trade war. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Beneficiary planning and asset protection go hand in hand. Cushing & Dolan has a new guide out called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries, and it can help make your planning process smooth and easy. Leaving your assets to your children isn't as simple as it sounds, especially if they have problems of their own. If you're retired or nearing retirement, it's time to consider the best way to keep your assets in your family while avoiding significant financial consequences down the road. Call Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699 and get their new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. You'll learn which paths are the safest when it comes to protecting yourself and your children while avoiding unnecessary risks that can create substantial problems in the long run. That number again is 866-848-5699. Or you can request it online from our website, LegalExchangeShow.com. That's LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
One of the keys to enjoying a peaceful retirement is flexibility. Hi, this is Chuck Zada from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Today, retirement planning involves lots of possible changes and challenges given all of the external factors that may affect your goals. So creating a budget for your retirement is vital to financial stability. Retirement comes with a number of monetary considerations, from how much money you'll need every month to managing your existing investments through market volatility. Our new guide is called How to Build a Retirement Budget, and it will offer a variety of options for your consideration that may lessen your risks when it comes to your planning. Call right now at 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. That's 800-393-4001 or request it online from our website, armstrongadvisory.com. That's armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay All-Inclusive Beach Resort and Casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, the grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
The Financial Exchange Show podcast drops every day on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. You're listening to the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This segment of the Financial Exchange is brought to you in part by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Tourism. The U.S. Virgin Islands are St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, and they are the perfect place to take your next vacation. Enjoy spectacular beaches, world-class cuisine, and a wide variety of water sports. Don't miss your chance to visit America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Go to visitusvi.com for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com.
Time for a bit of stack roulette here. Paul, what do you have for us?
Mike, the U.S. fertility rate remains at near record lows. More than 3.6 million babies were born in the U.S. in 2024.
I don't understand.
Shout out to me for one of them.
I don't understand.
My wife, really. But
when we talk about parenting in such a flattering fashion, why we don't have more people out there going for it.
It's an issue that, in terms of the fertility rate, all jokes aside, in terms of wanting to grow your population as a country going forward, it does present a long-term problem. If you're talking about economic growth going forward, we're projecting out on demographics, generations that are yet to come, but there is a lot of people out there that are forgoing or delaying having children. And this pairs kind of nicely with a story from the Boston Globe where the average child care cost in the state of Massachusetts has reached almost $20,000 annually. And I'm sure a lot of listeners will tell you out there that you can find even more expensive options than that $20,000 average that's listed here. It's twice the national average for the state of Massachusetts. And that is part of the problem.
We're number one.
Ultimately, the decision to have a child or not, that is completely up to the parents there. And that is something that is more social than purely economic. I think the economic reasons do get paired with the decision, but it is not ultimately the end-all be-all, but it certainly doesn't help the case that you have nationally an issue of childcare costs that are really expensive, most prohibitively here in the New England area. And the difficult part is there's not a real easy way to solve that problem because the biggest expense is staff, and they're only making $18 an hour on the childcare front. And that job, as we can all attest, having younger kids, it's not an easy one.
There's just not a market-based solution. Either you continue the current path or you subsidize it through taxes like we do K through 12 education.
Right.
And that's just going to be that'll be a decision that we have to make. But to this point, it's been, it's private until your kids go to kindergarten, and that's certainly a contributing factor. However, I can't point to any country that has successfully affected the birth rate by imposing cheaper costs on parents. So I
that would
know
be
that
the
that's
biggest
be
waste. Yeah,
story.
That would be the biggest waste of money to try and incentivize.
I don't know, but certainly there's no evidence out there.
There's numerous case studies in trying this, and it hasn't really.
I will also say that while I am, concerned about the United States birth rate, the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, puts together these birth rates, and it's slightly different than the Wall Street Journal number, so maybe this was estimates that I was working on. But the United States, according to the CIA, you can go to CIA.gov, the World Factbook, and look at this stuff, was 1.84 was the fertility rate in the United States, which isn't great. It puts us at the 133rd in terms of all countries out there that they were able to measure, and that's 133 out of 227 countries. So obviously not great. But go take a look around the rest of the developed world. South Korea, second worst at 1.12. That puts South Korea in a position where, quite honestly, 30, 40 years from now, I have no idea what that country looks like.
And
that's a shrinking population.
They were one of the ones that did try financial incentives to try and boost that rate.
China, most recent data, which I don't believe at all, was 1.55. And, quite honestly, there could be a few million missing babies in that number. Let's just call a spade here. I don't believe those numbers at all. Germany sitting at 1.58. There are very few developed countries in the world that are experiencing a higher birth rate than the United States. France is one of them that is demographically looking a little bit better than the United States.
Who's number one, does it say on that
It's
list?
all African countries. Yeah. So the birth rates in Niger, 6.64, Angola, 5.7, DRC 5.5, a couple countries that I'm not familiar with. Chad is sitting at 5.25, Uganda over 5. So the entire African continent is seeing much higher birth rates and has for quite some time, and massive population growth, which is obviously creating other problems there. But demographically, if we're talking about some of the Asian countries, China included in all of this, and large swaths of Europe, we are not the only country in the world
facing the problem.
There are many countries that are, in fact, I would make the argument that the United States looks in a far better scenario here because of two factors. One, our fertility rate's actually pretty good. And two, we are generally more comfortable with the idea of immigration in this country than many other countries are. Right? Like you talk about Japan and Korea and China and just societally, the resistance to immigration in order to fill jobs and grow the population there. It's just not something that's even really considered. And so I'm not saying that we will see massive immigration reform. I'm just saying that I think the United States would be more receptive to it than many other countries that are facing similar problems. And so, yeah, I don't know what those countries end up doing with their social programs that exist. China doesn't have much of one, but United States is already facing huge issues with our Social Security and Medicare funding plans. And that's when we have one of the better fertility rates in the entire world when it comes to developed nations.
It peaked back in 1957, the U.S. fertility rate at 3.76 births per woman. We sit at 1.62, or I guess, Mike, you had seen down at 1.83.
Yeah. Markets remain strongly in positive territory with the S&P 500 up about 1.5% as we close out the show. We'll be back at it tomorrow with Alphabet's, Google's parent company's earnings tomorrow on the show. Have a great rest of your day, folks.